You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut. And another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.
NFC East champs, divisional champs, NFC champs, and world champs.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour. As we are just a couple of days out of preseason game number 1, I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and joining me as always is my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, we finally got to watch the Philadelphia Eagles on the football field against a different opponent, and I know it was only one drive for the starters on both offense and defense, but we're going to get into it, but we saw a lot of good things out there.
Absolutely, man. I for one cannot believe summer is almost over.
I'm happy.
And I know that you want summer to be gone. You want a bit cooler weather, but but it also means football's in the air. The NFL season is coming, and so many things. I just can't believe how quick this summer went, despite how quiet things were with the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think this is year 4, year 5 we've been doing this, and I don't think we ever were able to have gaps between shows like we did this summer because of how quiet it was and because of how Nick Sirianni runs things. There's just no reason to talk about stuff because he doesn't run practices the same way we've seen former coaches do it and stuff. So, and of course, Howie was really quiet, but when he splashed and he made some moves. So that was nice.
I know you said it was Nick Sirianni, but I think it's more of an NFL thing now. I mean, Andy Reid's still going to run some padded practices. Mike Tomlin will, but those days are gone. Like, it's in the CBA, you're not allowed to start hitting or be in full pads. You're only allowed to be in full pads a certain amount of time. So that's just the new way of the NFL. And the Eagles didn't have that many injuries last year. I mean, we talk about it from the Super Bowl year, from 2017 to 2020. Like, it felt like going into the regular season or sometime throughout the regular season, the Eagles suffered a major injury. Obviously going back to the Super Bowl year, Carson Wentz, Jason Peters, Darren Sproles, Jordan Hicks. We can go on and on and on. And then that one year where they had 16 different or 14 or 15 different offensive line combinations in 16 games. But last year the Eagles were relatively healthy. Yeah, nobody's going to be 100%, especially in a 17-game season. But Nick Sirianni, I think, did the smart thing, and we're going to see that going forward. They're going to use these joint practices, which they have 2 coming up against Cleveland and against Miami. That's going to be – we're not going to see the starting offense or defense in preseason games anymore. They're going to get more work in a controlled environment like practice in these joint practices, and that's what's going to happen going forward. And if the Eagles are able to stay healthy, I have no issue with that. It's going to stink because obviously we want to see the starters out there. We want to see what they've been working on, but everything is going to be vanilla anyway. When there's cameras, in the mix, you don't want to give Detroit any footage in week one. I mean, they're in Hard Knocks. If I'm the Eagles, I'm watching Hard Knocks every Tuesday night. I'm getting something out of that. Before we go any further, Connor, let's you can follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. You can follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHerrell54. And follow The Painted Lines on Twitter at The Painted Lines and also on YouTube. So the start of the game for the Eagles on Friday night against the Jets couldn't have been any better. 6 of 6. They didn't come out running the ball because we know that they could run the football. The one thing we wanted to see all year coming into a Connor is, can Jalen Hurts throw the football? And he was 6 of 6, 80 yards, a touchdown, got hit late by Quincy Williams on a dumb play. And you saw the videos of Nick Sirianni going at it, screaming across to the Jets sideline. So Jalen looked good. And the only thing was, it wasn't anything crazy. He didn't throw the ball to A.J. Brown. I was kind of hoping, and I think a lot of people were, if you remember T.O.'s second preseason game, it was the first one in Philly the 81-yard touchdown to him. I think a lot of people wanted to see that. Let's go deep to A.J. Brown on the first play. But no, I mean, he didn't force it to A.J. He spread the ball around. Quez to Dallas Goedert, obviously, on the touchdown. But he was able to spread the ball around, and he was able to make smart decisions. My only thing is he still rolled out to the right. That's the thing I want him to – I know it's instinctual. That's what he does. But it's something that I want to see him shy away from every once in a while. You know, I don't want him to always roll out to the right. That's what he's natural instinct. He should stay in the pocket. A few of the times that he rolled out right, the pocket was clean. He could have stood in there. But I get it. Hopefully going forward, more game action is something that he won't revert to.
Yeah, and I remember, I don't remember the exact quote now, but I remember Nick Sirianni said something about him moving out of the clean pockets and that he was okay with it. I wish I remembered the exact quote, but Nick Sirianni was okay with him moving out of a clean pocket. He wants him to be able to, sometimes that's not how you necessarily want it, because you want to keep the defense on their heels. You don't want them to always think that the same things are going to happen. So sometimes he's going to stay in a clean pocket. He's going to throw the ball. Sometimes it's going to be a clean pocket and he's going to roll out, because that's just the capabilities that a guy like Jalen Hurts has with his mobility and his athleticism and his ability to really do things with his legs. So obviously it's something that the coaching staff supports. And at the end of the day, we just hope that he doesn't vacate clean pockets a lot, that he tries to take advantage of, clean pockets, because he really wasn't bad when thrown from a clean pocket last season. But you come into these issues where you're rolling out of clean pockets constantly and you're stuck wondering, well, why are you leaving a clean pocket? Why aren't you taking the time to go through your progressions? Are you really just a one-read quarterback? You missed your one read, so you rolled out. So we do obviously worry about that from time to time.
Yeah, we are starting with the offense, obviously. Plenty of good things we saw from the defense, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But you're right. And with it being preseason, and like, I want to see you play outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And obviously that first drive, with Hurts on the field, it was all throws. Again, we know Miles Sanders can run the ball, and again at practice today, he sat out with leg soreness. How the heck he got leg soreness, I don't know. He didn't do anything on Friday. He caught the ball a couple times maybe, but come on. And then the one thing when it comes to Jalen Hurts is when he got hit by Quincy Williams, one of the things that A.J. Brown, like he said, he went up to him and said, dude, slide. Like, we need you, obviously. I mean, Gardner Minshew looked all right, obviously, but the Jets are a really bad team. Like, I don't care about what Joe Douglas has done and the new coaching staff. That team is just bad. Like,
doesn't make, to me, it didn't matter if it was good. To me, it didn't matter if it was the ones. It didn't matter if it was the twos. Like, and like what happened to Zach Wilson was prime reason why you don't play the starters that much.
We aren't going to see Jalen and the starters the rest of the preseason.
Oh no, but one of the things that I heard because I was watching the New York feed for whatever reason, I got the New York feed, and they were talking about how Robert Saleh's plan was play one couple series, play a quarter, play a half of his starters in the preseason. And to me, like, that's ambitious. I mean, you already saw it. Zach Wilson, it was a non-contact injury at the end of the day. It could have been worse if somebody got a hold of him. If it was Jordan Davis in pursuit, like if somebody had got a hold of him and his leg bent the wrong way, he's not necessarily looking at a meniscus issue like he has right now. He could be looking at a torn ACL, torn Achilles. So that's why you don't want that. And obviously the big thing is it's the preseason, and they were begging and pleading. Why didn't he go out of bounds? He should have just went out of bounds. We get it. You threw an interception on the first possession or the first series. You weren't happy about it. You're trying to show something. It's the preseason. Save that for the regular season. Show us that in the regular season. The last thing you want, if that was a torn ACL, that would have been absolutely huge.
Yeah, for the Jets, and obviously, like, taking him in the first round last year, like, he's their future. I know a couple. And one of my close friends is a Jets fan, and we went to the Eagles-Jets game last year, and like on the ride there, I had my reservations about Zach Wilson this whole time, and he said, well, he feels like he has it, but I just don't know if he does. Like, he has it when it comes to the women, I guess.
I always have skepticism for the final, senior year, junior year rise, kind of like Malik Willis, Zach Wilson. Joe Burrow might be an exception to that. Joe Burrow made that rise, and he has been incredible. But that just goes to show it's not always going to be a guy like Joe Burrow. There isn't always going to be a guy like Joe Burrow. There isn't going to always be the Josh Allen who develops insanely in between year 1 and year 2, or year 2 and year 3. It just doesn't always happen that way. But that was one of the big things, is I always am skeptical of that, especially if there's a lot of question marks. Joe Burrow, the biggest question mark with Joe Burrow was more or less, can he do it outside the LSU offense?
Yeah.
And if that's the biggest weakness, is can you do it outside of the offense, you can probably feel a little bit better than some of the question marks that were around Malik Willis, Zach Wilson, and others who had that ascension in their final year.
I mean, it also helps when you bring the LSU's best receiver,
Yeah, when you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Eagles. Another guy I wanted to bring up, Cam Jurgens. Man, he reminded me so much of Jason Kelsey, and I know it was against the Jets, and it was just a preseason game, and you don't really and teams don't really game plan for the other team in preseason. Like the Detroit Lions, if are going to game plan for Jalen Hurts, they're gonna, especially after what the Eagles did to them last year, winning 44-6, running for 290 some odd yards in that game or whatever it was. So that the Detroit Lions aren't going to want that to happen, and like that's a game that you want to sit there, and if you want to look at the Eagles, that obviously week 1 is where you want to, because the Jets weren't game planning for the Eagles. Cleveland's not going to game plan for the Eagles. Miami's not going to game plan for the Eagles. We're at the point, I think, in training camps / preseason where you're going to start putting your installs in for week 1. Obviously, by Tuesday they got to go from 90 to 85. All teams got to go 90 to 85. The Eagles are at 88 after releasing a couple people today. And then you gradually go from 85 to 80, and then you have to go from 80 to 53, and then you have to put your practice squad, the 16-player practice squad together. So, like, obviously the tape for these young players that on the field, it's important. They want to go out there and prove to, if it's the Eagles or if it's to the 31 other teams, that they belong on an NFL roster. But the one thing that we started talking about, Connor, was, like, the Eagles aren't Eagles, and I'm going to stick with the Eagles because obviously we're talking about them. Like, their first minicamp practice was 58 minutes, and that was a big what the heck from a lot of people. Like, I feel like it'd be hard to put tape out there if you're having an hour practice, if you're having an hour out practice, because you want to see what your starters are able to do. Like, the guys that are going to make the team, you don't want them to sit on the sideline. You want them to be able to go out there, get reps, especially if you're installing new plays. But then you have to think about the young players out there. The Reed Sinnett looked terrible on Friday. Like, he looked awful. There was all this talk in training camp practices that, Gardner Minshew looked bad and Reed Sinnett should be the number 2. No, that's not happening. Gardner Minshew, unless he gets traded, is going to be the number 2 quarterback on this team. And Gardner Minshew looked good on in-game action. Maybe that's what we have. Maybe, Jalen Hurts doesn't look great in practice, but when the lights turn on and you get in between the white sidelines and you're on the field and live game action, that's when he turns it up. Just like somebody like Nakobe Dean. We haven't really heard much about Nakobe Dean throughout training camp practices, but on Friday, he looked like the Georgia Nakobe Dean because he was all over the field playing right behind Jordan Davis when Jordan Davis is clogging up the middle, and it looked like the running back was getting through, who was right there to make the tackle, Nakobe Dean. Like, you have certain players and that they aren't the greatest of practice players, but when you put them in a game-like situation, or you put them in a game situation, they're going to make plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up Cam Jurgens. So before we move to the defense, I'll talk about that. I saw Brandon Thorne, who works with Establish a Run. He's really well versed in the offensive line and the defensive line. And I posted a video of him showing some of the plays that Cam Jurgens had made. And it was really quite interesting to watch because I said it looks exactly like Jason Kelsey, almost identical, him moving up the field, how he pulls, where he goes, his movement, how he takes on people at the second level and the third level. It was just really fascinating to watch when he pulled that film together and he showed it all. I was just so intrigued by it. And I was like, wow, it looks exactly like what we expected and exactly what we wanted when we drafted him where we drafted him. And I understand that there's a lot of people who were skeptical of the pick, but I mean, I made the comment that I don't think in 2, 3, 4 years time that we're going to care about it, or that we're going to care about where he was drafted, because he is going to step into the role. And every single year we talk about, well, we got to find the next Jason Kelce, or we got to find the predecessor to Jason Kelce, because eventually Jason Kelce's going to have to go. And the big thing, 50, and finally they invested in a center, and yet I think the prospect here is like Jason Kelce was drafted in what round? The 5th round, 6th round. He was a day 3 pick. And so the prospect is, if we were able to get that out of Jason Kelce, why should we have to invest in the center position early? And I disagree completely with that. Like, I don't know if that's a full thought process of some people, but I think that people think because of Jeff Stoutland that we shouldn't look what he did with Jordan Mailata. Look what he's done with some of these people. Why should we have to invest high draft capital in the position? But if you want the right guy, like, people have been begging and pleading for Howie Roseman to make this move. He finally makes the move at the center position. Well, we thought he made the move last season with Landon Dickerson, but Landon Dickerson moved into the left guard position perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. So when Cam Jurgens came, it was like, we should trust what Howie is doing, because if there's one thing he knows what he's doing, it's working the trenches, finding the trenches, and building the trenches. So to me, that was a big thing.
I think the one thing, like, you mentioned how Jason Kelce isn't going to be. He's not. And you didn't get the Eagles broadcast. You got the Jets broadcast. But Ross Tucker was talking about, like, they were showing replay after replay of Jurgens pulling and Jurgens getting up to the second level. And it just looked like Jason Kelce. And then Brian Baldinger this week was on, or Brian Baldinger was with Glenn McDowell and Mike Sealski yesterday. On 94 WIP, and he said that he liked Cam Jurgens better than Tyler Lindenbaum. And remember, there was all the talk, like, oh, maybe the Eagles will use one of their first-round picks on Lindenbaum. He could be the heir apparent. But, man, Jurgens just looks the part out on the field. He didn't look phased. And the Jets played their starters. Like, Quinnen Williams was right over top of him, and he didn't look phased at all.
And I know that there was he was catching a lot of flack over the lost rep at the link against Jordan Davis. And Jordan Davis said that was one rep. You haven't seen the reps where he got the better of me. Jordan Davis pretty much said, I hate that video came out, because there's probably multiple videos you could find of me losing reps against him, because they're both just really good players. And like Cam Jurgens, like you said, was really good. And one other guy I wanted to talk about, I was actually shocked by this, how much Jason Huntley played. I understand, to me,
was hurt.
There was injuries, but
you're not gonna put Sanders out there with the second and third string. So
I get DeAndre Torrey probably wasn't gonna play this week. He'll probably see time next week. But I thought Kennedy Brooks would get a bit more of a look than what he got. Like Kennedy Brooks, and I understand. Kennedy Brooks had the first run of the game that Kennedy Brooks had was almost a first down. I think it was an 8 or 9 yard rush. And everyone was like, Kennedy Brooks has to be on this team. I was actually really impressed with Jason Huntley. First of all, Jason Huntley showed a bit on the kick return side of things, 16 for 48 with a touchdown, but running behind the second and the third line, offensive line, is pretty good. I get 3 yard per carry averages, but of running behind the second and the third line, and some of them weren't looking at the top of their game, that's impressive. And then he also was targeted 5 times and made 4 catches for 39 yards. To me, I thought there would be a bit more competition, because to me, if I don't start to see more Kennedy Brooks, or I don't see DeAndre Torrey more next week, I'm starting to almost think that Jason Huntley could be like a runaway RB4.
And I don't think Torrey's going to make the team. I just think he's a camp body, because they had the least amount of running backs on their roster in camp throughout the entire NFL. And then you have 2 that didn't play and were missing practice, so it doesn't surprise me, they just brought them in. But I think Huntley has the inside track because of kick returning. And I get it, most of the time the ball gets kicked through the end zone, but with that, I'd rather see Huntley back there than regular returning kicks. And he's going to be able to provide a spark on special teams. So and he has the burst. He's probably the quickest of the running backs. Now, he's not the biggest, obviously. He's not going to get a lot of carries, but if he has to spot, be out there on a drive or two, I think he can catch the ball out the backfield and, line him up against or have a linebacker try to cover him. It's probably a mismatch. And then, like we had mentioned, special teams, he can be the primary kick returner. I don't think he returned any punts on Friday.
No, he didn't do punts. He did 2 kicks. Well, he did more than 2, but the ones he returned, it was 2 that he returned for 61 yards. That's impressive. That's 30-yard average. That's better than what we got last year for most of our kick returns.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where his inside track is. I mean, obviously, when you have somebody like him, you want to find any way you can to make the team, and being able to make the team is being a contributor on special teams. And then like the guy that you've been all about, Britton Covey, whatever. I mean, it's only one game. I don't think he would, like, as of right now, if like they had to make decisions now, I don't think he's on the team. I think that he would get cut. And I didn't see that burst that, like, obviously and I've talked about this all the time. I don't like Pac-12 football. I know he had a couple of big returns against Ohio State, and Ohio State being a Big Ten team and one of the better teams in the country. But like, the NFL is a totally different monster, and he doesn't have that. I don't know. I'm still of the ilk that Britton Covey is not on the team as of right now. Things could change, and then he has that was it thumb sprain or whatever, in one of his he has a sprain in one of his fingers. He was probably, I think it was like on light duty, whatever, didn't practice full. So we'll see. He's going to have to make some plays in these preseason games. I think that the Eagles might rather have nobody back there to return punts and can mess it up instead of putting like Covey back there or even putting Rager back there. We'll see.
I think one of the biggest things that when I was talking about Britton Covey was like, there's quite a discussion there about wide receiver 5 and if they even consider keeping 6, because look at the night. Like, Zach Pascal had a really good night too. He was someone who stood off the page to me. He had a really good night.
The Eagles are certain keeping 4. AJ Brown,
yes.
Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Zach Pascal are locks to make the roster. Then the question becomes, do you keep 5 or 6? And if it's only 5, is it going to be somebody that can contribute on special teams like Covey? And I know we don't like to see him back there, but Rager is their primary punt returner right now until somebody else takes it from him. Or do they keep 6 and then do you go like Greg Ward and Covey, or Greg Ward and Rager, or Rager and like, that's where I think the big question comes, because we know that 4 is a lock.
Yeah, and like what I was saying, like Zach Pascal, he had a really good night. And like there was no debating that there was going to be 4 guys, and he was the 4th guy. Quez Watkins had a really good night too. He saw some early targets. He saw some early work from the guy we needed to see the work from. And to me, there was never any discussion about the 4 that they were keeping, but there was always a discussion of the 5. Greg Ward's suffering through some injury issues right now, which hurts him because he really needs to be able to be involved in this. Now, Britton Covey's injury, there's a part of me that almost, terribly to say, wishes it was a more serious injury so that they could stash him and keep him. Because at the beginning, my thought process was this: you stash him and nobody gets a shot at him, and you see what you got in him, you put him on the IR, you keep him out of everyone's sight for 6 weeks or whatever. You never know, you might even be able to extend it and make it a whole year thing, draw it out like they've done with multiple players in the past. But even Jalen Rager had a okay night. Like, he actually had a decent night playing with the 2s, pretty much Gardner Minshew. And Minshew looked his way. Well, he was targeted 4 times. It almost felt to me like he was targeted more than that, but Minshew looked his way. Minshew felt comfortable looking his way. And in recent interviews, Jalen Rager really kind of spoke out on, this has been humbling, going from first round pick to roster bubble player, and I'm really going to take advantage of this. And to me, it kind of looked like he did take advantage of it with the New York Jets game. To me, I would still rather see him gain some value and be dealt, because at this point you're 4 deep. Jalen Rager needs to provide that spark on special teams. He has to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts anymore with Jalen Rager. He has to be able to be out there on special teams and effectively producing on special teams to be on this team. If he is your fifth wide receiver and he brings nothing more than, yeah, you can target this guy 30, 40 times this season and he might produce 15, 20 catches for 300 yards and 1 touchdown, that does nothing for this team. That fifth wide receiver, or that sixth wide receiver has to be able to produce on the special teams.
He does. And my thing is, and I don't want to compare him to this guy, but like if you go back to Nelson Aguilar, his third year, I think, was 2017 when we went to the Super Bowl, and the Eagles brought in Alshon, brought in Torrey Smith, and it was and Nelson Aguilar went into the season as an afterthought, and he ended up. I mean, he was the best receiver in the Super Bowl. Obviously, like he had a really good Super Bowl game, and now, and I'm not saying that's going to happen for Rager, but like we traded for AJ Brown. I mean, we had Devontae Smith on the roster. We have a couple other guys, Quez Walker. Like I know that the wide receiver room now is a lot better than it was back in 2017. I mean, looking at the names and whatnot, but I don't want to say it's a fear of like maybe getting rid of him too soon, but I think Howie is if Howie had his druthers, he'd rather have him on the roster instead of just cutting him and letting him go. Like J Jaw's going to be gone.
I would hope
that's a lost case right there. Like I don't care that he's trying to become a tight end, but like didn't he have a drop pass I think on Friday? Like he's done like that. This is year 4 I think, going into year 4 for J Jaw. We know he doesn't have it, and I don't want to play this. Oh no, he couldn't do the receiver thing, but maybe he can be a tight end. I don't want to play that game with him. He's not good. And I think if like looking at it, and my internal debate is, would I rather put the time and energy into Jalen Rager, or would I rather put the time and energy in the J Jaw? And I think that you have the potential, and I'm not saying, obviously, I think if everybody had their way, neither of them being here is the answer. But if you had to pick one, I'd rather go out and try to do it with Rager because I think he just has the ability and he has more talent than J Jaw has. And I'm not even going to look at the depth chart. Obviously, the depth chart at tight end is a lot easier for J Jaw to potentially make the team. But I just think that Rager's ability is a lot better than J Jaw's.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, you look at the tight end room and it seems more shallow and like more opportunity there to break in. But to me, that doesn't even matter. At best, like I would not put him on that field over Jack Stoll. And I don't even love Jack Stoll. Or Richard Rodgers. Like if Richard Rodgers, like he's got a permanent locker in Philadelphia, that man's always got an opportunity to be here, whether it's on the practice squad or whether it's playing on Sundays. It doesn't matter. He's always going to have a home here. But like J-Jaw, to me, I get it. He was a good blocker, but that was a good blocker as a receiver. Now he's actually got to go up against like linebackers, defensive ends. You never know. He might be trying to work off of a defensive tackle who might be stunting out. Like you never know. And he'll get bullied. Like to me, it just doesn't make sense. I would rather invest the time in Jalen Reagor because if you can really, really work with him on that punt return, if you can really get him to get his head in the game, I think he can be a good wide receiver. I just think what's best for him and what's best for us is that he get a second chance elsewhere. And I mean, I know it's been a point of contention and a point of discussion amongst the fan base. It just feels like a fresh start for him would be best. And if he succeeds in his fresh start elsewhere, good for him. We can't sit there and live and die on this idea that what if we got 53 men that we get to keep, well, 69 if you want to talk about the 16-man practice squad. But if you end up to the point where you're going to cut Jalen Reagor and hope he lands on your practice squad, he's getting picked up. So like you have to sit there and say, is he one of the top 53 men who give me the best chance on Sunday? Right now, no. I don't think he does. I don't think he will. And I don't think there's much he can show in preseason that will get me to think that.
I mean, I think there's something that he can show. Before we move over to the defensive side of the ball, I mean, the one thing about Jalen Reagor is, and he spoke about it this week, he's really humble. Like, he's not going out there and saying, like, this opportunity should just be his. He's out there to prove go out there and earn this roster spot, and that's good to hear. But let's move over to the defensive side of the football, and we got to talk about our first-round pick, Jordan Davis. The Eagles are, with their first 2 picks, they took Jordan Davis and Cam Jurgens. I think both of those guys are proving why the Eagles were smart, and the Eagles have always, starting back with Andy Reid and obviously, with Joe Banner and now Howie Roseman, they always prioritize the offensive and defensive lines before anything. And obviously, when the Eagles traded up above Baltimore and they took Jordan Davis, people were mad because they didn't take Kyle Hamilton. I mean, I think Jordan Davis proved, and I know it was against the Jets, and McGovern, I think, might be the Jets starting center this year. So, but when you're out there manhandling 300-pound plus men, you're a powerful dude. Like, Jordan Davis is going to be really good for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that defensive line is going to have a deep rotation, something they haven't had since that 2017 season. Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox potentially starting tackles, with Hassan Reddick, who did nothing but rush the passer on Friday, so that was good to see. Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham, and then if you think of that second wave, Milton Williams and Jordan Davis, and Josh Sweat, and I don't even know who would be on the other side. I guess Derek Barnett. Did Derek Barnett play on Friday? Like, I don't think I saw him on the field, which I'm not complaining, obviously. But
you're not complaining, but you probably didn't see him there because they're protecting him because he's going to be on the roster. So, but it would be nice to see what he's going to do and how he's going to fit.
You say that, but Fletcher Cox played. Javon Hargrave, like some of the start. Hassan Reddick was out there. Brandon Graham was out there. So, like, I don't buy that whole protecting him because he's making the roster. A lot of the others, Darius Slay was on the field. James Bradbury was on the field. Marcus Epps, and like the starters were out on the field. Kaiser White, dude, looked really good. Like, that might be the steal of free agency for Howie Roseman. Getting Kaiser White from the Los Angeles Chargers. It's the first time in a long time that we had linebackers that knew what the heck they were doing. Kaiser White, TJ Edwards, Nakobe Dean, everybody flowing to the football. Nakobe Dean reading the offensive lineman, seeing what Jordan Davis was doing in front of him, which he's used to because they did it for years together, seeing what Jordan Davis was doing in front of him and able to make tackles when a running back tried to come to the, cut back to the other side. It was really good just seeing linebackers, seeing Jordan Davis, seeing Nakobe Dean, seeing our draft picks out there on the field Friday night, making plays and making names for themselves, albeit in a preseason game.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the biggest standouts to me. And one of the things that I said was, like, that's huge. Like, watching Kaiser White make that play, he read the eyes, he stood there, and he literally Zach Wilson made a terrible decision. It was all around a horrible play from a quarterback perspective, but he didn't get impatient. He didn't move away. He followed the eyes. He stuck with the eyes. He made that play. We're not used to that. Even like TJ Edwards, like you said, he was flowing towards the ball. He was making plays. Nakobe Dean, same thing. It was really impressive. It was extremely impressive to see those guys. And there was another play, that the Jordan Davis play, I think I posted it on the Kelly Green Hour. I retweeted it on the Kelly Green Hour page, where Jordan Davis was getting triple teamed. And I think it was Taryn Jackson on the outside, who Andre Chichero was coming in. Chichero tripped up and whatever it was, but there was enough there that Taryn Jackson backed off, read the eyes, batted the pass down.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, if you're seeing this, and I get it, it's up against the 2s for the Jets or the 3s for the Jets, but I think that was might have been Zach Wilson on that play. I couldn't tell who the quarterback was, but that if they are causing that much trouble now without Hargrave out there to feed, without Fletcher Cox, without Josh Sweat, without Brandon Graham, they were able to triple team them because they had none of those guys out there whatsoever. They probably had the Reno Wrens of the world out there. Imagine what it'll be like when the starters are out there and they actually have to make the decision. Do I take Sweat? Do I take Reddick? You can't triple team a guy at that point. You can double team a guy, but at that point you can only probably decide to double team one guy. Or if you double team 2 guys, you're leaving at least one or two guys open to go in and make the decision to get at the quarterback. But that was another guy that hopped off the page to me was Taryn Jackson. He had a really good game to me, and whether he's an edge, whether he's a linebacker, whatever you want to say, I think he's got a really good chance because guys like Sean Bradley weren't good. They didn't have a good night. They didn't show out. They didn't show much when they were given the opportunity to show out. But a guy like Taryn Jackson just had such a phenomenal night as well. But it goes without saying, if a combination of guys like Reno Wren, Taryn Jackson, Jordan Davis, and a Russian Andre Chicher can cause that type of havoc in a preseason game, I would hate to be the offensive coordinator trying to prepare for what you're going to see, especially when we're seeing a vanilla defense. Yeah. This is plain Jane as it can be. And you're about to see a whole lot more havoc, I think, come from Jonathan Gannon. And even to me, I saw more from Jonathan Gannon from a play calling perspective than a lot of last season in this one preseason game. We saw a lot of different looks. We saw people drop back. We saw people moving in. Like, there was a lot of moving parts, and I was like, I can get behind this.
I agree with you there. And I'm going to be really interested in these next 2 weeks with the joint practices with the Browns and the Dolphins, because they're going to see a lot better talent on the offensive side of the ball for these teams. You know, Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt will probably not be practicing, but with the receivers they have, Amari Cooper. This is just talking about Cleveland, Amari Cooper, and the guys they have over there. And then you go to Miami with Tyreek Hill. There's just all the weapons they have. This is while we're not going to be able to see it because it's going to be a joint practice. It's not going to be in a game situation. I'm more intrigued by those practices and how the defense is going to stack up against those guys in those type of situations, because that's way better talent than what the New York Jets have right now. Sean Watson is way better than Zach Wilson. Tua and Zach are probably on the same wavelength, whatever. But if you just think about the offensive minds that are going to be calling plays against Jonathan Gannon, Kevin Stefanski with Cleveland and McDaniel with Miami. That's where I think they're going to get a lot of work these next 2 weeks, and it's going to make them better. Because when you get to Detroit, it's Jared Goff, it's DeAndre Swift, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams is probably not going to be on the field, but there are still weapons over there, and that's going to make them better for this week 1 game against Detroit.
So Bobby Johnson actually says, are they being overly optimistic about 2 to 4 weeks?
Oh, I think, is that the Jason Kelce?
I'm guessing because he's really the only injury. I think he's going to play week 1 as well. Okay, so there has been the discussion about Jason Kelce. Is he going to be ready? Is he not going to be ready? First of all, if he's not ready for week 1 against the Detroit Lions, I'm fine with rolling Cam Jurgens out there. I have zero stress that he can go out there and do the job right. Me and LJ are no, medical practitioners here, so I don't think we're going to be the best for this. But, I mean, looking at the injury, seeing what people have said about the injury, 2 to 4 weeks sounds like the general timeline. I don't think this is an optimistic thing. I think this is just really a general timeline on Jason Kelce. And like I said, no matter how you roll the dice, you get a decent matchup week 1 that if he's not fully ready, if he's not fully there, you can probably be comfortable in saying, give him the extra week. He's earned that extra week. If he needs that extra week, you give it.
And a lot of people want him to start 122 straight starts at center. That's why he started that week 18 game last year. He went out there for a snap to keep the streak alive. And apparently, I think it was Brian Baldinger was speaking with Kelce at the game on Friday. And while talking to him, he said he's going to be ready to play. And I think I agree. I don't think that they would have went through the procedure if he wasn't going to be ready to play week 1. But you're right in saying that it helps having Cam Jurgens as the backup, because Jurgens went out there and proved that he could play at the NFL level. Obviously, I mean, with the Jets, it's a different story. But
but I mean, it's the Detroit Lions. Is really
Detroit's
that different?
I think Detroit's defensive line might be better than Who do they have? Do they have Danny Shelton at defensive tackle?
And you got Aiden Hutchinson.
Aiden Hutchinson's
you
an end.
definitely got some guys.
Did you watch Hard Knocks? This first episode?
I did not.
No. Do you usually watch Hard Knocks or no?
Rarely.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not something we get a whole lot of in Canada. You got to kind of hunt it down.
Because like a lot, I'm intrigued by what a lot of people think. Like going into, or getting up to week one as Hard Knocks progresses up towards it. A lot of like Dan Campbell talks the talk, but I don't know if he's a really good coach. I know he's a really good leader, and he says all the right things, but can he really coach? Also, I miss Deuce Staley. Like Deuce was awesome in episode 1, and I mean I would give anything to have Deuce back on the.
But the one thing about Campbell is like, man, whether he can coach or not, his players play their asses off for that dude. I have no clue what it is. Maybe it's the entire coaching staff, but there was games where they had no right in being involved in last year, and they were there pretty much right into the fourth quarter.
66-yard field goal from Justin Tucker to beat them.
Yeah, like there's some games that they like you should against the Ravens. There's no reason Huntley or Lamar Jackson that team should be in that game like that. But listen, I know the Baltimore Ravens had a horrible year. They were ransacked by injuries. So I mean, but let's not worry about the Baltimore Ravens. Let's get back to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, let's get back to
I kind of am curious after seeing that game. After we did our defensive depth chart right before this. I mean, I think the offensive is a little more clear than the defensive. I think there's a lot more flexibility in, for the last 4 or 5 spots defensively. With just one game in your sights, has anything changed in your mind on your depth chart at the back end of it? Obviously, the front end is going to remain the same, but on the back end, was there anyone who stood out to you who got a lot of playing time or anything that you're like, maybe there's something here?
Mario Goodrich, who I had on my roster anyway, I think he's really close to going to make the team. Josh Jobe kind of got he got picked on a little bit, and I know you've talked about him transitioning to safety, and that might be a better spot for him.
Yeah, I see. I'm looking at PFF, and they said he was targeted 6 times, 5 receptions, 57 yards.
Who's that, Jobe?
That was Josh Jobe. Like that. Yeah. That's definitely not great. You don't want to see that in coverage. But to me, that was one of the things. He's a bit slower. He's a bit more tight-hipped. Maybe the move to safety is what makes sense to me. But one of the guys that stood out to me, they had the highest snap count went to Andre Chichare. He was one of the guys who I had making the back end of that safety. He's the one who I wanted over Kevon Wallace. I prefer Chichare to Wallace because Chichare to me provides as the 4th safety. He's a gunner for special teams and a damn good gunner at that. Very instinctual, very smart. Like that's the type of guy. And if they're giving him that opportunity to have the highest snap count among all defensive players, to me, that stands out as that's something you need to look at because he played that many snaps. Reed Blankenship played 34. And then you have Kevon Wallace who played 24. Kevon Wallace got a good chunk of time, but the fact that they're getting a better look at some other safeties to me has me curious. Because Kevon Wallace shouldn't be seeing anything less than Andre Chichare.
I mean, I'm not curious yet. It depends on because like if you remember that one of the first practices, Sanders was with the second team, running back, and then he went. So like I want to see what this week looks like. I mean, I think Chichare might be on the team anyway, just because of the special team. Like he could be the Rudy Ford for this team, just because of his special teams ability. Blankenship might be somebody to look out for though. Like. He may have a chance to sneak onto this roster as the 52nd, 53rd man and beat out a Kevon Wallace, who I thought would make the team. And again, I go back to when he got drafted. Me and you were high on Kevon Wallace, and obviously it didn't work out under Jim Schwartz. And last year injuries, and then he came to camp great shape this year. But I mean, you think about it. We know that Tart, Epps, and Harris are locks to make this to be safeties on this team. Now, do they keep 4? Or do they add a 4th, or do they add another corner with the potential that like maybe Avonte Maddox, if needed, could go back? I wouldn't do it, but like say you keep Jimmy Moreland on, he's a really good slot corner. If you needed to move a Devontae Maddox back to safety, you could do that.
You have like you said, you have Jimmy Moreland. To me, Josh Jobe makes sense because he's someone who in a nickel package or a dime package, you
I think
can roll
Mario
him out.
Goodrich is better than Jobe. I would keep Goodrich over Jobe. Is my right now personally. That's why I would keep if just those two, because I don't think both of them make it. But if you were talking one or the other, I would keep Goodrich over Jobe.
Which is weird because Goodrich didn't get a huge look. Like he only played 6 snaps and Jobe played over 20. I think it's definitely going to be telling this week after they have 1 week and we start to see some reports out of the joint practices, who's playing where. And then we see in that preseason game, if there is some major adjustments, then I'll be really interested to see what happens. Personally, because if there's like Josh Jobe ends up down at 10 snaps and then a guy like Mario Goodrich ends up at the 25-30 snap mark, well, then we see that there was a major overcorrection. And is that an overcorrection because they didn't like what they saw from Josh Jobe? They want to see more from Mario Goodrich. There's a lot more discussion to be had then, but I think that that's going to be a big thing is some of the lesser named guys, if they see more playing time or see less playing time, if Chachere starts to see less playing time, I almost think he's on the roster and they're preserving it.
Well,
but other guys might not be the same.
And as I mentioned before, in the joint practices, that's where the starters are going to get the reps. So in these games, you're not going to see, Darius Slay. You're not going to see James Bradbury. You're not even going to see Avonte Maddox. This is where you're going to see the younger guys. You're going to see Jobe, Goodrich, Blankenship, Chachere. You're going to see these guys to try to earn their way onto this roster. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But when it came to the first team offense and the first team defense for the Eagles, I was very, very happy with what I saw. And then again, it was against a Jets team that's not very good right now. But we will, it'll be interesting the test that the Browns give the Eagles this week in these joint practices. And then the Sunday, it's so weird. They play at 1:00 Sunday, and then they play the Dolphins on a Saturday. Like we get a Friday, Sunday, Saturday preseason. Like all I know is that we're 4 weeks away from September 11th, the week 1 opener in Detroit. Can't wait.
Agreed.
And Steven, yes, I did play, and you played for the Delco Cowboys. I know. We played against each other. There, he won the MVP 1 year in the semi-pro league that I played in.
Small world.
Very good linebacker.
Small world.
It is.
But yeah, I was definitely I was just happy to have football back. That was great to see that. And I got to see a lot of guys like Ivan, I was pretty impressed with Tay Gowan. There's some guys we got to see a lot of the names that we've been talking about that we maybe have been skeptical about. And to me, I'm intrigued, and it gets even more interesting because you go from 90 to 85. We already saw Ali Fayad and the offensive lineman. Dunkel, yeah. William Dunkel was both got cut today. There's 3 more that need to be cut by Tuesday. I kind of wish the gap between the second game and the third game you cut more, because then you go from 85 to 80, but then you get the big 80 to 53. That's where you get the huge, and then the decision comes on in regards to who you're putting on the practice squad. I kind of wish they made that number 85 to 75 or 70, and you saw more cuts happening. But obviously at the end of the next game, we're going to get a lot better idea of who's getting cut.
And I think it's because that third preseason game, we know, a lot of teams don't play starters as it is, but that it's the 4th preseason game of old, where nobody plays. You're playing the back end of the roster and trying to get these guys tapes for other teams. We'll see a lot of Carson Strong and Reed Sinnett. I'm surprised we didn't see Carson Strong Friday.
Yeah, and the response to me from Nick Sirianni was kind of weird about it. He said, "Oh, just not how it went. This is how we've had it planned out. You might see Carson Strong." If Carson Strong doesn't see playing time and you risk letting him go to waivers to try and bring him back to your practice squad, I'm going to say it right now, you ain't getting him back.
Well, I think I'm actually, if I had to change in one of my, I had the Eagles keeping 3. I had them keeping Hurts, Minshew, and Strong. I actually think unless they trade Minshew, they're going to keep 2. And hope, and whichever Reed Sinnett Carson Strong, whichever one that you release doesn't get picked up, is who you bring back onto the practice squad. That's what I think happens, but we'll see.
Yeah, my thing is, if you're high on like a guy, if they invested a significant amount of guaranteed money in Carson Strong, the idea that you're not playing him to make sure, like, do we want to keep this investment in him is weird to me. Reeds the net will clear waivers and you'll be able to pick him up again. I think with Carson Strong, it's not that Carson Strong, what was it? There was like over 10 teams. There was like 10 to 15 teams that made offers to him as a UDFA. Guaranteed he's not coming back. Somebody else will 100% pick that guy up because they'll say, oh, well, we'll take him because we're going to put him on our practice squad instead, or we're going to protect him, or we have room for that third quarterback.
Well, it'll be interesting.
It's debatable in Philadelphia if we have room to carry the third quarterback. Like you said, you're starting to rethink the quarterback room. If Minshew there's not enough trade interest, there's not enough value there, and they keep him as a backup, there's no reason not to believe that you can just roll with Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew and just that's it and let the other people go.
So I'm intrigued against, again, these next two preseason games because we're not going to see Hurts. And if we see Minshew, maybe a quarter. I saw enough of Reeds in that last week that I need to see Carson Strong this week. I need to know what this guy – obviously coming in, like when we signed him as a UDFA, it was a lot of – he has a very strong arm. But then there's all this talk about in practice, you don't really see it. I want to see it. I want to see him put a speedster, put Devin Allen out wide left and let him run straight down the field. Let me see a fly. And I want to see Carson Strong just launch it. I just want to see if he has the arm. And obviously, like that, seeing him play is where we'll know, will we keep him? If other teams would even have any potential in wanting to take him if the Eagles were to release him. That we got us to see him play. We haven't seen it. So I was really, really shocked that we didn't see him on the field at all. And again, my other one was the Derek Barnett. I didn't see him on the field. How many snaps did he get? Did he get any snaps on Friday? Like maybe. And then in practice today, he got into a fight with Andre Dillard. And I like the spark out of Andre Dillard because Dillard, obviously coming into this is his third year. And there was a lot of talk like the Eagles could trade him, but he's showing some fire. And that's what you want to see. Linemen are very, very valuable. We know that the Eagles starting five is good, is really good. 4 of the 5 are really good. The 5th is probably going to be Sayamalu. But you still need that backup left tackle. And if Andre Dillard could get his head on straight, like it seems like he has, and, putting in the work throughout the offseason, I'm not giving him up. Like, I'm not going to just trade him for a 7th round pick. No, you keep him because somebody down the line will really need a left tackle and will give you a premium pick for him, or you may need him. I'm not saying anything's going to happen to Jordan Mailata, but you might need Andre Dillard to step in for you one day, and I much rather have him than have Laverne Clark or whatever. Like, I'm not saying LaRaven Clark. I'm not saying he's bad, but like I think Andre Dillard is probably better than him.
Derek Barnett played 2 snaps, but
I'm shocked at that.
Yeah, I mean, they did. I think they invested enough in him that obviously he makes the team. He's the 4th defensive end. The way that the versatility of this offense or defense, like we may be like, oh, they kept 7 defensive ends, but really in reality, a guy like Taryn Jackson or Patrick Johnson or Hassan Reddick might be classified as linebackers, outside linebackers, whatever. So that leaves the room there. I don't think Derek Barnett was ever at risk of not making this team. As much as we may dislike him and wish that he was at risk of not making this team. And like in a couple practices ago when they said like that he jumped offside and it was like a penalty and it's one of the few that they've seen in the entire practice, that's unsurprising to me. But if he's making that mistake on when he's given 30% of snaps versus being given 70 or 80% of snaps, it's far less opportunity to screw things up, I think. So I'm okay with Derek Barnett as your flex type of guy. You got Brandon Graham, you got Sweat, you got Reddick, and then you got Derek Barnett shooting out there for 25, 30, 35% of snaps. I can live with that. I was a little surprised on the wide receiver front. we don't deny Zach Pascal. Zach Pascal's making this team. It's clear the money was invested there. He used to play for Nick Sirianni. Sirianni really likes him. He's taking the J-Jaw rollover. I would really hope the next week we start to see a move away from even like, I don't want to see those first 4 guys out. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, who's been nursing some injuries. Quez Watkins, we know what we got in Quez Watkins. I don't care to see him. I don't care to see Zach Pascal. We get that those 4 guys are locks. Devin Allen only played like 8 snaps. Like, those are the types of guys I want to start seeing more of those guys. Deion Kane was out there. He played a decent amount of snaps. He had an atrocity of a drop at one point in the game. It was right on the numbers, and he dropped it. But yes, I would rather see that guy out there. I don't care. We lost to the Jets. I don't care that we lost to the Jets. We need to see these guys, and we need to be able.
Well, the
team needs to make a good decision.
Yeah,
well, exactly. It doesn't matter. It really
unless you're the Ravens, who've won 21 straight preseason games, and that's what they care about. But the result does not matter. Like I mentioned before, I was happy to see the starting offense look really good. Happy to see the starting defense look really good. Beyond that, this is where we have to fill out the roster, and that's what we want to see in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot, like I said, offensively, I think there's a lot of guys who need to be given a fair shake so that they can see if they deserve that opportunity to be that wide receiver 6. Do you want to keep 6 wide receivers? Do you want to keep 4 running backs? What do these guys bring to the team? Put Devin Allen back there to return kicks at this point. I get Jalen Reagor. We're going to see a lot of Jalen Reagor because he's got a lot to prove this preseason, which is fine. But also make sure you get Devin Allen out there. We saw a ton of Huntley, which was great because it really makes you realize that there could be, I understand you said there's injuries, but the reality of the situation is Gainwell wasn't playing, Sanders wasn't playing, Scott's likely not going to play. Those 3 are pretty much locked into their positions, but were they going to keep a 4th guy? Because like we've been talking about, they seem really confident with 3, but it's an oft-injured position, so obviously they're likely going to keep a 4th guy there, but who's going to be that 4th guy? Is it going to be Kennedy Brooks? Is it going to be Jason Huntley? Jason Huntley, great explosion. He offers that special teams. Kennedy Brooks doesn't offer the special teams, but he does offer that, Jordan Howard hammer type play that we might want to see mixed in there with the running backs that we already have on roster.
I think they re-signed Jordan Howard. I think
there's a lot of people who want that. There's a lot of people out there.
Miles Sanders gets hurt a lot, so they're definitely going to keep 4. It's going to be Sanders. It's going to be Gainwell. They love Boston Scott for some reason, so to be Scott. I think when it comes down to it, you're going to see Jordan Howard back on.
And it was huge. Like, he was like, I get it that the mentality had to shift on the offensive side of the ball anyways at last season because things just weren't working come week 8 when they decided to become a run-first team. But without Jordan Howard in week 8 and he went off, would we be talking about the same run-heavy offense, successful number 1 in the league run-heavy offense? I'm not necessarily certain we are.
We'll see. But it was a good showing by the starters on Friday against the Jets. Yeah, they lost 24-21, but the result is meaningless. The Eagles' next game is next Sunday against the Cleveland Browns, a 1:00 kickoff in Cleveland against Deshaun Watson and that group. They'll have a couple of joint practices with them this week, and then the week after they play the Miami Dolphins, and they'll also be down in Miami with a couple of joint practices with the Dolphins. So we'll probably be on again. We'll figure that out. I don't know if it'll be after the game.
We'll
Sunday.
Figure it out. It'll be Sunday or Monday, but
yeah. But going into the regular season, I think we've decided we're going to do 2 shows. We're going to do a review show and a preview show. So it'll be a show before, obviously before the upcoming game, and a show after the upcoming game or after the game.
I think we kind of have Tuesday and Friday penciled in potentially.
Yeah. So obviously once we get these details ironed out and settled for sure, we will let everybody know on our Twitter account. But if you enjoy listening to us, which we appreciate it if you do, you'll have the double dose of us a week. It is the regular season time. We need to get our Eagles talking in, obviously, and it'll be fun to be able to hopefully talk about a team that has a chance to win the division. Obviously, Dallas are the reigning division winners. And you got to find a way to beat them. I think Washington's going to be better.
And Washington will be better. But I mean, if you've watched some of the New York Giants Daniel Jones film,
Giants
concerning.
Giants stink. They're going to finish in last. I'm shocked, and not that before we finish up here, I'm shocked that the Giants haven't just traded for Jimmy G, like they should. But Jimmy G could end up in Jersey with the Giants or Jets. Especially,
I'm starting to think he might end up in Cleveland, man. Things are a little spotty there, and Jacoby Brissett isn't that great. I mean, it's going to be really interesting at the end of the day to see where Jimmy G lands, because he's definitely going to find a new home by week 1. That gap between preseason game 3 and week 1, he's finding a home.
Weeks. Yeah, and if you remember, the Eagles traded Sam Bradford for a first-round pick, obviously with Teddy Bridgewater's injury in Minnesota. So I think I know the Niners have told him we're getting rid of you.
Zach Wilson was an ACL tear away from me probably putting the Jets as the odds-on favorite to land Jimmy G. Like, that is
as soon as that he went out of that game, there was talk, hey, Jimmy G knows the staff. Better be on the phone with John Lynch to make it happen. But yeah, he'll be traded. He'll definitely be traded before week 1 because it is Trey Lance's team out in San Francisco. But yeah, so like you said at the beginning of the show, Connor, it's good that we got to watch Eagles football. We get to talk Eagles football. Thank you for everybody that has watched the stream. If you are, you can follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. You can follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurrell54. If you are listening to us after the fact, wherever you're listening to us, please rate and review the show. And if you wanted to reach out, obviously on Twitter, you can slide into the DMs, and we both monitor our Twitter. And Connor does a great job on game day and even throughout the week of putting out the major news or practice details, game details on the Kelly Green Hour Twitter. So for Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour.
You want Philly food?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut. And another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.